Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton here with Brandon and Brayden once again. Part 2 of our summer preview. Part 1, we talked about all the top tier stuff. We talked about all the stuff that we thought was going to be relevant at Worlds. Today we're talking about everything else, and we're going to have a complete tier list at the end of the video. Let's get right into it. We're talking about everything that got a top post-ban in BCS 24-25. And we're talking about all the stuff that just got a release as well, or is getting a release this summer. So we're going to talk about everything that is potentially relevant going into Summerfest. And we are going to start with Adventure Time. Adventure Time had a single top post-ban, but it's kind of a set that won't die. It still has that top end with the cancel burn and the added burn on it. Very consistent at closing from 3-0. If you can triple it, the standby trigger makes it easier to do so. Builds up a lot of stock with its level 1 standby combo. There are reasons why it has fallen off. It's not as consistent. Its fixing tools aren't as good as a lot of the modern stuff. But it still has a very good top end. And it also has some counterplay in the Demon Bloodsword event that just sends 2 of your opponent's characters from board to their hand, can get rid of standby targets, can get rid of interaction, can just get big stuff off the board, can be really a problem for stuff that doesn't have a way to protect their big board.
Yeah, Adventure Time, unfortunately, it's an old set. It's lacking some very key pieces. But yeah, it's just missing like a good selective level 1 combo. It's like it's just running a standby with stock as a value engine, and it's just banking entirely on this incredibly explosive top end.
Pretty sure it just doesn't have a CX swap at all.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Next is Avatar. Brandon, you've attempted to master the elements. What's the current state of Avatar, given everything that's happened to Avatar and the meta?
Well, when the world needed him most, he vanished. So I think that's pretty well spoken with the set as well. With the ban of the Sokka, we've seen Avatar very much kind of drop off. We saw a couple different times where Avatar did make it into Top Cut, but it's very much kind of relying on that same advantage engine playing into the bar level 1 to play into then the choice at the top. You're very much trying to play into that potentially explosive endgame and trying to manage your deck state to balance the right ratios of color in your deck to make the explosive top end go off. And if it goes off, you do well. If it does not go off, you don't. And so having that kind of almost like coin flip top end really makes it dependent on even more so on luck to kind of try to finish out a game in that way.
Avatar, one of the winners of the 10 BCS events post ban. Ari Ferreira, gonna stay with you, Brandon. Loves to play that stock soul level 1. Why is this, soul slamming explosive deck not more relevant in 2025?
Well, I mean, realistically, it is trying to just slam 2 souls over and over again. While that can be effective in a lot of situations, it really is then turning those 2 soul slams into the explosive end at the top. It also is generically easier to turn off that top end if you can play around its memory condition with its drop search. If you can deny the power of that drop search to get it into memory, the level 1 combo doesn't do anything and the deck kind of falls apart from there. If they're able to make that happen and pull that off to what it needs to do, then you aren't going to be able to stop it very easily. But it also requires it to get to 3 first to get its explosiveness off. With its combo, it doesn't have the opportunity to clean its stock very well. It can build up stock quite easily. so it is pretty susceptible to stock swap as well. So you can
Unfortunately, I just
try to
think it's a
take
little.
you can try to take advantage of it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the deck just has too many weaknesses and holes that can be exploited by the opponent player.
There are a couple different ways to play Ayakashi Triangle that are currently relevant. Brayden, you are higher on the 8 standby list. I played you into this 8 standby list. Where does it stack up going into a competitive trios environment?
Yeah, so we did see both Ayakashi lists top. 8 standby is probably the better deck of the two, being just a very traditional 8 standby deck. The problem is that you're competing with Nino effectively as like your big body deck in the format. You have a very solid top end. You have a very, very strong character neg soul counter, and an absolutely insane anti-change counter. And you're just trying to sort of spin your wheels into as a standby deck until you get to that top end to go for all these burns and pay out all your resources. Uh, Very solid. It's exactly what you would think of when you hear standby. The 8 pants has also topped once. Very different in terms of its play style. It tries to just turbo out this early play board that's hexproof and then spam heals. It's like that's all it does is it just heals. And then maybe burn ones. Very mediocre finisher, unfortunately. But uh, if you cannot deal with a deck that heals down to 2-0, it can give you a hard time. I think that both these decks, unfortunately, just have a little bit of trouble with some of the other decks in the format. Notably, the Pants deck struggles against zone bombs, which a handful of notable decks are running at like 3 to 4. And 8 standby is just outclassed, unfortunately, sometimes as a standby deck.
Gonna stay with you, Brayden, and ask you about Azure Lane. What, aside from an award winning musical by Andrew Lloyd Webber, does Cats bring to the table this season? Everyone knows about the level 0 game. Is there anything beyond the level 0 game that makes this set relevant?
Yeah, so like everyone obviously knows Cats go Burr for Azure Lane plus 1, 2, even 3 soul at 0 is ridiculous on a 0 that can sit at like 5k. Other than that, we ever so often we'll see like pants lists come out with the Bremerton cigarettes combo because that also gains a soul. Being an experienced deck really helps with that condition. In the top end, we have uh, kind of this restandy mocha split top end with Bismarck is the typical go-to. And sometimes just it will just push damage through. That's the name of the game with this deck is push damage through. And the top end is to try and confirm more of those big swings. Restanders kind of not the most optimal finisher. Uh, they never really have been like the best finisher, but it fits right in with what the deck wants to achieve for the format.
Gonna go back to you, Brayden, for your thoughts on Blue Archive. 2 tops, new set, still kind of finding its footing in this meta. Is Blue Archive kind of a nice dark horse, like a third deck in a team that you think can have some success?
Yeah, Blue Archive's a nice. So first off, Blue Archive is a massive set, just a very large set, being a gotcha game set. But what we see coming out of the tops is the trial deck pants into the early play choice level 3 combo, which plays basically identical to 8 choice quints, in that the biggest difference though is that it swings bigger, which is ridiculous because that quints deck already swung massive, but it also has access to some better counters. The combo procs on climax placement so you can't lose combos to anti-change. And the top end is not tied to a climax. It's a whole slew of off finishers, specifically this 3/2 Mika, that is effectively just Aki from Chainsaw Man without a climax. This card is ridiculous. It's insane. It's probably one of the biggest reasons to be playing Blue Archive. On top of that, you get access to things like +6 soul counter, good anti-change counter, and neg soul counter, all of which can still be played even after like resolving double of your finisher, of your like off finisher, I guess.
Next is 8 salvage this is Bochi The Rock. It's basically 8 salvage quints with a bar trigger. Level 1 is the same thing as the salvage level 1 in quints for the most part, except it doesn't have the same power condition, but on attack, pitch 1, as long as you meet experience 2, look it up to 3, choose any characters or the 2/1 event and put them into your hand. You also have the +1 hand Brainstormer, so you can just sit with 9 hand the whole game. And at the top, you have Burn 3, except it's on Pay 1, Pitch 1, so you don't need to necessarily have a 9-card hand in order to pull off the top end. And the top end also has the Marine cantrip on play. Sack something from board, look it up to 3, put 1 to hand, put 1 to stock. Extremely efficient, extremely low to the ground, gets what it wants almost every time. It's also got the advantage of the bar trigger, making the level 1 combo easier to loop. I like this. I think Bochi's still very relevant. It had a pretty solid season, had 3 tops post-ban, including a win. I think you're going to see Bochi in Summerfest. I think there's no reason not to. I think it's a very consistent X2 looking set. It just plays this one deck. There isn't really anything else in the set that people are really playing, but when you have something that's this consistent and gets what it wants as often as it does, with a reasonable top end, low cost top end, and a ton of good fixing tools, you're going to have something that's relevant.
It is susceptible to memory kick, but at the same time, it can also play around it slightly, but just be forewarned that memory kick does shut off the top end.
When I like sit here and theory craft like a 1K1 deck, it's amazing how similar they always end up looking to like Bochi, just because it has everything that I would ever want in like just a standard 1K1 deck.
Going back to Brayden for Chainsaw Man, has fallen from grace since it got hit. Still had 3 tops post-ban. Still definitely relevant, but how relevant, given all the new stuff that is going to make this meta more difficult to find wins in?
Sure, I think that the Advantage Engine early is still a very powerful system that helps definitely propel it to that next level of play. You're slamming climax every turn, so being able to push damage pretty consistently while still getting the resources every turn for that is, I think, still a very viable system to play and a viable thing to be able to continue to help make that deck seem relevant as well as a essentially reduced top end with only 2 Akis being able to be played, but at the same time it can still reach into compressed decks pretty efficiently. So I think you're still going to see that really tight closing windows. I just don't think you're going to see it have the range that it once used to have with Aki. I'm looking at Guilty Gear. Guilty Gear has range for days. It just has a struggle in the system to get there. You're playing into that standby package, trying to bring down your bar finisher a little bit early, so that way you can try to spam the explosive top end at 2 instead of 3. With that in mind, you're kind of very much playing into that kind of game plan where you're trying to stand by early, stay at 2, and then try to close out from 2 that way. While it has some Advantage Engine pieces, it can be clunky at times and usually on the smaller side. So if you're playing into bigger boards, you're kind of losing the battle that way. You're kind of having you almost have the worst of both worlds in regards to a standby deck, like an 8 standby deck, or a 1k1 deck. Because you're trying to split the difference to try to get that explosive top end off, and you do run into a couple of weaknesses along the way with that.
That's kind of always been the knock on Guilty Gear, is that it has all these really interesting profiles, these really fun and cool profiles, but it feels like it never puts them all together in a cohesive package that works consistently. It got one top post ban. It's still around, and it's definitely going to, I think, long term, end up in that pile of sets that have the true believers that have kind of min-maxed a specific list, and they are particularly dangerous on their day, right? You might see some Guilty Gear X2 kind of days from people who, have really leaned into the set and know what they're doing with it. But by and large, it just feels like it's outclassed by a lot of other stuff that's in the room right now. Brandon, back to you for Licorice Recoil. Wasn't really relevant, frankly, in the back half of BCS, just the one top. But with premium coming, is Licorice Recoil gonna work its way back into relevance in Summerfest?
Well, with the premium booster, it does actually get some interesting pieces that help really solidify some of that consistency that it needed, as well as help to cut the cost of the finisher as well. There's a new card that allows you to be able to, when the card is played, you get the CX from waiting room and add to hand. You can pay one, sack that card to search for a copy of your finisher, and then play both that copy you just searched and another one of the finishers both down on the stage. When you do, they both get the ability that your opponent can't play events from hand in their battle step. So kind of denying the event package that we see with the Nikkei, kind of denies money counter as well, to be able to then go into the previous finisher that you once had of being able to restand and deal burns in addition to that as well. So like between those two, you having that ability to play the old combo slightly cheaper, get the CX, and deny events into them, I think does increase that consistency and closing potential enough to be able to see this more often in Summerfest.
Moving on to Macross Delta, Brayden. This deck is weird.
We got a funky one. So Macross Delta, a lot of the had two tops this last season. They were both on the Venus Link package, which means you are running 6 different climaxes at least in your deck. Very unique mechanic. This is the only deck that does this in English. Basically, what it does is the back row can go basically if it sets your deck to 5 cards and puts everything else in waiting room. And then your combo, effectively what you're running is a combo that spawns out cost 0 cards. So your combo will spawn 1 copy of itself. That second copy will then spawn either a third copy of itself or the big 2/0. That will then, you just went +2. You just generate a whole board of attackers for 1 stock or for 1 card. And then at the end of the turn, the deck will refresh, and you get to sit on a fresh deck every turn, as long as you can loop the combo. The downsides of this deck are sometimes your opponent has mill counter, and you blow up. That's less frequent. The more common downside is that in order for all this to go off, you need to have 2 copies of your 1/1 event in memory. When you play the 1/1 event and put it in memory, it does nothing. It is actually a garnet, or a brick, or whatever you want to call it, but you need to resolve 2 events at level 1 if you want your deck to actually function. And that will be the biggest downfall of this deck going into any season, unfortunately. If you get that off, the deck has a very strong gameplay loop. Top end is Mocha. It's Mocha 3, so it is quite strong. And yeah, it just sits there and farms resources and cancels on fresh decks every turn.
I love weird decks. I'm a big fan of stuff that likes to kind of try to take the game and tweak what it can look like, right? It's a different way of kind of approaching a game that traditionally goes level 1 combo, level 3 combo, get your resources, all that stuff. Macross Delta says, I'm just never going to have a traditional refresh. It plays all these different climaxes, so you have all these different effects that can potentially go off. I like this kind of thing. I think it's good for the game when these sorts of decks are at least relevant. And as you alluded to, 2 tops post-ban, both on this Venus Link list. So Macross Delta's here. But again, as you were talking about, it does have consistency issues. And that Mocha top end, as much as it can close from 3-0, the ceiling is hard capped for a Mocha. So that definitely makes closing from anywhere in level 2 much, much more difficult.
Being able to refresh your deck every turn is also pretty strong. Like being able to make sure that you have the compression exactly what you are trying to see every turn, I think makes things really big and really important.
Refreshing is just a heal one.
Looking at Oshino Co, definitely playing into the 8-choice deck itself, playing typically that level 1 combo into a level 2 combo into a level 3 combo. So while a variety of decks or ratios exist with that, you're very much trying to play into getting climax into hand every turn, playing into making sure your deck does what you want it to, but also having a response for almost every level of the game. That can be really helpful and important. The other side of that is that it can be difficult to get all of the pieces every time from 1 to 3, so you can struggle potentially with some consistency issues with that. They do a lot of things to help make that with that, but the consistency is going to be your biggest issue going into it and having the pieces you want at the levels you want it. That being said, it does have a decently explosive finisher trying to look for level 0 as opposed to just climaxes on its finisher to get the burns off that it wants, so you can still surprise somebody and close out a game that way.
Also, the level 0 lineup is pretty rough until we get the set 2 announcement.
Very much so.
Ruby. 4 tops, all top 8, and a top 4 after the ban. It got a new set, so it got some new stuff that definitely moved it up again after it had been pretty irrelevant for a while. Almost every list is playing some combination of 2 different standby triggers and either a full slate of standby to go 8 standby or the level 1 choice. The top end, one of the level 3 combos remains the same. It's still the Ruby from set 1, where if you have the memory condition, you can tap this character to clock kick whatever's across from it and burn 3. The other level 3 combo, if you have a different Ruby on the board, you get to stand one of your guys. So you can stand the 3/2 that you bring in off of your standby trigger and give some soul and burn one. So this is more of like kind of the mid game, trying to push some extra advantage, get your standby target standing and attacking immediately, and then you use the old level 3 combo to kind of close. It doesn't feel as board based, as a lot of other standby heavy lists, even though it does run a lot of level 3s. You don't tend to see like the 2/2s and stuff that you would see in a traditional standby list. Some of them will run a couple, but that's not as big of an emphasis. The board stuff in the mid game, it's more about trying to get your stuff together so that you can get your level 3 game on the board. Usually, you'll see it with the choice level 1. It's just on reverse search on a choice trigger. Like, it's a good trigger that can go +1 in a lane. The new stuff has definitely allowed Ruby to be more relevant. It's still fringe for the most part. I think especially with 8 standby quints gaining more relevance, and also like Nikkei's big board, Nikkei's ability to clear. Ruby isn't going to be able to, get its level 3 on the board at level 2, stand it up, and then keep it cross turn maybe as easily as they have in the last handful of months. Still definitely relevant. Top end ceiling is not super high, but it is pretty consistent with the clock kicks that you get. So Ruby's still around. You have to be aware of what it does when you play into it, but still not quite as potent at level 3 as I think it needs to be for it to really make a splash.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the standby Ruby builds are, of course, just kind of outclassed as standby decks from other standby decks. Ayakashi and Nino being the two big ones. And then like being the hybrid list, I think the Jean is very strong as a nice little patch for selection and plussing. But at that point, you're sort of restricting your standby game plan. Also, yeah, the standby targets are very similar to what 8 standby Nino used to be, where you had these big, strong offensive standby targets that you would just encore back.
Moving on to Ferrerin. I think Ferrerin is, we've talked about this before, in a position where it could be quite relevant. It's very similar to like the Danmachi that we used to see, where it's very based on a level 1 combo that works with its event package. This level 1 combo goes to get the top check 4 torch event that you can play on the counter step. But so much of this list is about events. There's a lot of nice event synergy, and the event package is really strong. You have a stock shuffle 3-1 event. You have a 2-0 level down event that stocks itself. You have a 1-1 fixing event. You have a 2-4 burn 3 event. Like, you have options in Ferrerin with that event package. And you also have options with your top end. There hasn't been a top with the extra booster top end in a little while. Last top with this was in December. That's the one where you have some modular damage stuff where you can mill your opponent 12, or Mocha 2, or you can just pitch 2 burn 3. People tend to be more on the trial deck top end, which is just on play cantrip and then on attack pitch 2 burn 4. Climax Assurance in an 8 pants list to boot with a pretty damage heavy top end. It's just Hendrickson at home. I think a real top end and a consistent mid game that can also get itself out of bad deck situations so that it's not as likely to just get punched in the face when it's in a bad deck state, and it almost always gets to its level 1 refresh point. Between all of that, Ferrerin is very much a good fundamentals Weiss kind of deck that has a reasonably high floor and a reasonably high ceiling.
Yeah, the trial deck also having the whole package with the with like the TD brainstorm and everything, being able to like just get it out for almost no cost is a huge upside for that package compared to the booster finisher. The booster finisher being a healer in a set that's already playing a very strong early play healer is kind of redundant. So I feel like the check is also benefits the deck more in that sense.
Especially with the different tech pieces you have in Ferrerin that you're able to um, play into some of those pieces to get these pieces on cheaper, or be able to apply um, the anti backup against some of it. Like just being able to deny counterplay, I think, is a big thing too. Because I think having ability to deny counterplay, especially into this upcoming meta, is going to be very important.
Next on the list, Spy Family, a set that had a bit of a resurgence post-ban, surprisingly enough. 5 tops was the 5th most of any set post-ban in BCS. Pretty much the only deck that anyone is playing right now with Spy is the 8 pants list, although there was an 8 bar list that got a top as well. The Fiona level 1 combo on attack, look it up to 3, add 1 to hand, and then put the rest back on top of deck in any order. Changes into a different level 1 that has defensive top check 3 when attacked to try to limit the swings coming back at it. Sits pretty big defensively, sits at 8-5 with the change brainstorm in the back row that gives 1,000 power when your stuff hits a change effect. So if you have 2 of those in the back row, it's 8-5. 8-5 is a pretty good wall into everything that isn't Quince and Slime and Overlord and Ruby, and yeah, that's kind of the problem for Spy, is that 8-5 doesn't hold board consistently. You can play the counter, sure, but that is a card out of hand that you have to play, and you are already, not doing super great with resources in Spy, quite frankly. You're spamming Brainstormers, hoping to get pluses, hoping that you can get pluses on board without the backup at 8-5, which is, when your opponent hits level 2, not very easy anymore. So you're almost hoping that your opponent stays at level 1 so that you can get your pluses, so you're not able to push good damage in the mid game while also getting your level 1 game to go off. It's a weird timing thing. Like, going to level 1 first is advantageous for you, but if you miss that timing, it can become more difficult. The level 3 top end is just on attack, pay 2 to burn 3, and if that burn 3 cancels, burn 1. It's kind of a lot to pay for that effect, honestly. Another one of those lists that can close from 3-0 pretty okay, but the ceiling is relatively limited for the amount of stock you're putting into it. I don't hate this list. I don't think it's bad. I don't love the Twilight top end, and I don't think that the level 1 mid game is super good into the meta that we're playing into right now.
Yeah, it's kind of the blessing and curse of Spy is that this level 1 is how your deck lives and dies by. And if it goes off and works, it's like the best feeling deck ever.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment your opponent swings for 9,000 power, you just sit there and like cry.
And to get to 8-5 also requires that you have 3 copies of the level 1 that the level 1 combo changes into in your grave, and 2 of your Anya Brainstormers in the back row. So not only are you fixing for 3 copies of your combo and your CX, you're fixing for 2 of the Brainstormers in the back row, and you need to make sure that you're milling enough to get all 3 of your targets into grave. It's so easy for something to not come together, so that you were already looking at not holding all 3 lanes. You were only going to have 2 lanes sitting at 8-5, or 2 lanes sitting at 7-5 if you can't find the second Brainstormer. And then, maybe you can back up one of them, but then you're only holding 1 cross turn, and it's just not... It's fine, because you need to get that top check 3 defensively. You need to get the defensive top check multiple turns to really make this worth it. to really make this work, because it does also change back, right? It changes back into your level 1 combo, and you can just kind of go again if you trigger the pants. That's pretty cool. So there's definitely like a path here. There's definitely something that works here. But when it's dependent on winning board defensively at level 1, that's always a red flag, kind of no matter who you are, just because of how easy it is to get offensive power right now in this meta. And when you're Spy Family and that's like the only thing your deck does, you absolutely need to hit this, and you need to hope that your opponent doesn't have an answer. Brayden, talk to us about Shauna. 4 tops, all 4 were top 8s, including a top 4. It has some relevance, clearly. It has that anti-burn. That's the thing that everyone talks about. Is Shauna actually good, or is Shauna just kind of like a thing that runs around and occasionally annoys things at the top tables?
Yeah, so a lot of people just sit here and say Shauna is like this vanilla deck that runs healers and just anti-burn and just sits there. I don't think that's quite correct anymore. If it was just the premium booster or extra booster, then you would be right. But with the Dengenki Bunko dropping, we actually have like a real finisher. You can't triple the finisher, like expect to triple it. But 2 copies of Shauna Finisher will actually just like end your whole game from like a decent amount. On top of still being a healer, still being the anti-burn on the board. It is a rogue deck still, effectively. It's probably like the most traditional concept of that in Weiss. Stopping any type of character auto damage, shuts so many different things off. And it's just a thing that this is a deck that we mentioned it in our last video with Overlord. Decks that put pressure on the deck builder versus decks that put pressure while you're actually playing. Shauna is the 1/1 UG back row is a card that you just need to be ready for if your deck relies on burns to win. Because it only takes one Shauna matchup to cost you that whole game. Some decks don't have to worry about it. Some decks run mochas, some decks run restands, some decks like Overlord run event burns. But yeah, Shauna still like it doesn't do a lot outside of the UG and the outside of the UG and the Shauna finisher, but those 2 things are enough to keep this deck around probably forever.
So, but what if you played Tell Your Opponent No? They don't get to have a level 3 game. Haruhi Suzumiya got a top in 2025. It feels like this happens like once every year and it never gets old. The power-up set gave Haruhi just enough so that it is still vaguely playable, and it picked up a 4th place finish in Switzerland. The only relevant thing that Haruhi Suzumiya does is it shuts off level 3 games, and it does that in 2 different ways. One is the 2-0 event. Play it on the counter step, your opponent's climax goes off the board. If your opponent is smart, knows what's coming, knows how to play around it, they'll probably just side or try to bounce your board or whatever. But that's what you have to do in order to play around it, because Haruhi always has this, because it's the only thing they're playing towards. The second way that Haruhi ruins your endgame is the 3-2 Mikaru. On play, pay an extra 1, you get to look at your opponent in the eyes and say, you don't get to play a climax next turn. And then they look at you and say, what? And you say, you don't get to play a climax next turn. And then they pick up your card, and they read it, and then they call a judge. It's how it works. If you play the 3-2 Mikaru and pay the 1, your opponent cannot play a climax card next turn, even if they bomb the card, even if they get rid of the card. That is an effect that is put on the player. So unless the player can send themselves to memory and back, they're stuck literally not getting to play a level 3 combo. And there is very little in this game that feels better. It's super satisfying. I can't lie to you. It's so much fun. I love this deck. Will always love this deck. Level 1 needs reverses on a stock soul. Doesn't feel great. You do have a real healer now, which is kind of nice. You have a real brainstormer now, which is nice, but that's kind of it. Haruhi is really just treading water until it gets to its level 3 game, which is all just shut off the opponent's stuff and then try to win with free burn ones on a salvage combo. It's not that good, but it's still here for some reason because every once in a while there's a brave soul who takes it and gets a top with it.
Yeah, being able to show off climax combos, I think, is a pretty deadly thing, especially when a lot of decks are reliant on that to finish games.
It is probably one of the most abusive floodgates in the game. That's why the card was banned in Japan. The big unfortunate thing, besides just being an ancient set and having some really struggling with card quality, is that the introduction of standby has really hurt Haruhi, because a lot of these standby decks aren't looking to play, don't always need to play their standbys as a finisher. Notably, Quince doesn't care about playing the standby ever, unless you're on the set 2 finisher package. In general, yeah, most decks in the game rely on a level 3 climax combo for their endgame. There are a few notable exceptions, but this is already a pretty niche pick to be talking about the counter matchups.
Yeah, no, you're not playing around this. There's no reason to play around it because there's going to be maybe one person in the entire room at a 100 team regional that's on this. Not something worth teching around. We've talked about it, frankly, for longer than we should have talked about it, and I'm confident that the number of people who skipped this section is large. But I wanted to talk about it. It got a top, so we talked about it. All right, Brayden, take us home. Tokyo Avengers. Somehow relevant. Popped out of nowhere to get 3 tops down the stretch.
Yep, post ban hit the ban list hit enough of the top decks where Tokyo Revengers decided it was time to come out again. 3 of the 4 topping lists were on the Pa Chen package. They were all on dual laners. It's Alice. It's like this deck was Alice before Alice. It's you just gotta there's not much you can do, to be honest, against 2/1 vanillas that are like 16 plus thousand power at level 1. There's not a lot of decks that have answers for this. The dual laner portion of it is a little bit easier to play around and is like a knowledge check and a matchup check. Tokyo Revengers, notoriously very weak to stock swap. The format, they're these topped, seeing a lot of Quints at the top end makes it is quite clear that Tokyo Revengers does very well into a format like that, because Quince does not have stock swap. When your number 1 deck doesn't have stock swap or your main out, your deck is just free to roll. Top end is still looking a lot like the Bochi package, this massive explosive top end that tries to nuke your opponent from low level 2, and is very capable of doing so. There is counterplay at like every level of this. Stock swap being one of the obvious ones, but the Bochi top end requires your Bochi to successfully attack and like not die, as well as having the 2 front rows, so it loses to memory kick, can struggle into tap counter, struggle into some other weird niche counters. Anti-burn from Shauna does very well into this. But yeah, unfortunately, Tokyo Revengers, being a very scary deck, is a matchup check most of the time. If your deck is well prepared and you know what the deck does, you won't be caught off guard. And that's a very good idea in general of what we're looking at for a format this wide, is that a lot of stuff is relevant and will probably be seeing play. Knowledge is your best friend at Team League. Knowing what, in general, what decks want to do, what they're looking for, what their finishers are, what little weird niche techs they have, is will help you go so much further in tournaments than basically anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that.
So we have some new stuff on the horizon as well, and I think that it would behoove us to talk about it. We don't need to spend too much time on it because, frankly, most of it is not particularly relevant. Like, a lot of it is just kind of there because it's new, and we don't expect it to have a massive influence on the meta. There are 5 brand new titles that are either just out or coming out this summer that we have not talked about. Most important one is probably going to be Bang Dream My Go. I'm going to ask Brayden to talk about that one, and then we'll get into Girls Man Cry, Hatsune Miku, Rurouni Kenshin, and Persona 3. So, Brandon, My Go. You're really high on this. You think it's going to bring Bang Dream back into meta relevance.
Yeah, so MyGo doesn't actually have too many. So like the MyGo and Ave set doesn't have too many trait restrictions in it actually. Enough so that we can actually run some old Bang Dream cards. So we have access to stock swap Fumio. On top of having specifically the Ave set has a pretty nasty top end where you can just get a lot of like instances of damage out with the salvage top end. Usually we see that paired with the level 1 bar combo. We also ever so often see the 8 pants deck show up, the MyGo deck. Runs a pretty cool level 1 combo that just pays out your trigger every turn and then stocks one from waiting room and salvages one. So quite strong in over the course of a few turns. Keeping clean stock, really selecting for what you want in that moment. It needs a deck speed tool to sort of help facilitate it, but Bang Dream's a massive set. So we have options for deck speed. Back to the Ave stuff, bar salvage is the go-to list. Has the ability to sort of like cheat out or like pseudo cheat out its level 3 with this Time Machine 2-1. We see this in Japan every so often. Helps really reduce the cost of a lot of stuff as well as maintaining board presence, pseudo board presence in a way, guaranteeing attackers turn after turn until you're ready to go for endgame.
As we mentioned, out of the 5 new sets, Bang Dream probably the only one that's super relevant.
I know Girls Band Cry, at the end of the day, if you really wanted to, has serviceable level 1 combo, has stock swap, and has Marring on pants. And that sometimes is just good enough to really get you there. So I expect that deck to at least do decent. Hatsune Miku, unfortunately, we don't have set 2 announced. And until that point, they don't really have a solid finisher. Typically what I've seen is that people are leaning towards these 8 bar lists running this check 4 that is attached to your brainstorm, your spammable brainstorm. Can proc from like the back row and everything. And just runs a really clean game into just a low it's like into just a high floor, low ceiling finisher.
Persona 3 looks pretty vanilla, frankly. Like, it doesn't look bad, it just doesn't look super exciting. The choice finisher seems to be the most popular one. On attack, you can salvage something to your hand or bounce one of your opponent's characters to their hand and stock one from the top of deck. Or you can ditch to burn 2. So, like, there's a package that brings the level 3 down early. So, like, the idea is to, try to bring that down early as much as you can and then try to loop the choice cross turn. It's fine. Like, I don't think it has a great ceiling, and I think that's always going to be like a big issue for me, is that like just burn 2 one time is not enough a lot. So you'll need some auxiliary stuff, which the set does have, but nothing in it's too impressive. Most important thing about the set, I would argue, is the 3-1 stock swap event. I think that's actually important. That's probably the most important card in the set for my money. It does technically offer stuff that Persona 5 and Persona 4 can use, but it's a trait mess. So like it doesn't, like, even though there's like a Ricky and a CX swap, like stuff that those sets don't have, it's not like it makes those sets relevant, just because like fixing for those pieces is still a nightmare because of trait lock. So, but Persona 3 is there. Like, if you see it, it does some stuff. It's usually level 1 pants into level 3 choice, it seems, but nothing too crazy here. Brandon, do you know anything about Kenshin?
One that I've seen that has the most play has been the 8 salvage build. Definitely kind of that generating resources to get into the finisher type of deck. So it plays into the level 3 combo, which is a pay 2, ditch 1, and resonate, reveal 2 of the 0/0 in your hand to be able to, on attack, as long as you have 2 or more other characters, you can burn 2 twice. So pay 2, ditch 1, reveal 2 from hand to burn 2 twice to your opponent.
And the only cost is playing a 5-card hand.
So just making sure that you have the very specific cards in play to make it happen, but at the same
really
time,
cool flavor. I think this is one of the best, like, coolest IPs and flavor sets that we've gotten in a long time.
Absolutely.
So yeah, Gungale, like, it has neat tools from the old stuff. Like the anti-burn one is really neat. There's just not a lot of things super burning for one. Like looking at the top, the Eins burns one for the actual Eins part, not the events, and then shot triggers. Like that's a Nikkei. That's all we really got for burn 1 damage.
Gura from Hololive, the burn ones, the mill.
Yeah, has so yeah, Gura turns into Marian effectively. Slime, I guess, if you reveal zeros off the top. That's not exactly what you're going for with Gungale anyway. It's a new 1K1 deck. It's got a bunch of nice pieces from the first set.
And with the new stuff, it has a new top end to be able to play into some of that as well. Being able to just on reverse burn 1, and then if the whole field is reversed, be able to pay additional costs to burn 2 for each lane, I think is actually going to be really interesting as well. So you have a burn 1 and then a burn 2 potentially on your finishing combos. So I think that that's actually a decently strong thing as well, especially if you're playing into some of the older stuff too, like the early play package, just get additional burns in that way, just to try to get those additional attacks in, get the early plays on field effectively, get big bodies, and try to wall things out.
Gungale notably has one of the best early play lineup sweeps for Weiss of its era.
So as promised, here's our tier list. This is what you get when the 3 of us try to make something that we all mostly agree on. Obviously, there are going to be some differences between us. We're pretty much in agreement on quote-unquote S tier. Although I think all of us are also in agreement that the S tier isn't as distinct as you would usually expect an S tier to be. It's almost more like an A+ tier than a true S tier. But Bunny Girl is definitely, it was top on all of our lists. 8 Standby Quince was up there as well. Right now, Salvage Standby Nikkei seems to be the Nikkei list that is in front. I think it's the one that is most likely to stay near the top by comparison to the other 2 the Dorothy and the bar, but I think we both also like. But I think we all also have like varying levels of expectation for the bar and the Dorothy. Like we all think that they're capable. They're all at least A tier for all three of us. A tier is where we start to, I think, see some stuff that's a little more interesting. Maybe the most notable thing immediately is the new Bang Dream stuff being this high on A. Like clearing Overlord, SDS, some of the new Nikkei stuff, and that's mostly Brayden's doing. So I'm gonna let Brayden defend this choice.
So I'm a big believer in the Ave deck. I think it's a very consistent player. It's got all types of assurance for both combos. Bar Salvage is a pretty decent 1k1 lineup. Acts like you're in color for Buns for Luck. You have Buns for Luck. So I'm a big believer in what this can bring.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. I think you have consistency with bar, Buns for Luck at 2. Like, I think you have a lot of the pieces that you would want to be able to play into things. So, no, I agree with it being this high.
2-1 stock swap event, still one of the most broken cards they've ever printed. I think we did kind of agree, though, between the three of us, that the dividing line between, like, the top half of A tier and the bottom half of A tier, right around where SDS and Ichika are, there is a little bit of a drop-off there. And I think we're pretty much in agreement on what's on what side of the divide, except obviously, like, as I've said before, I would have Overlord on the other side of that divide. But Slime, I think, is going to be an interesting one, given that it has dropped off pretty significantly post-ban. Given that Nikkei and Bunny Girl are both being introduced to this format, Nikkei can challenge the Mirren board, and Bunny Girl doesn't care about the Mirren board. What keeps Slime this high up?
In my opinion, the Slime package is still just good enough. Miron is just still good enough to be there. Personally, in my opinion, it's either the Rimuru Salvage level 1 or the Rimuru level 0 pants combos that you're running with this. I'm not a believer in the standby package. I think it still pushes enough damage. I think it generates enough resources just because Slime has those profiles. It has level 0 stock swap still that it could pay for. The only big thing holding it back, I think, is that it's not going... It's going for a finisher, but it's going for a very mediocre finisher compared to what a lot of other stuff is capable of doing.
A lot of what's going to end up happening with the Mai stuff specifically, a lot of people are going to try to be like, what's the right level of compression to beat the Mai? What's the right level? Ultimately, I think the answer is you don't have to, you can't think about that. Like, if you run numbers, if you just look at the numbers straight up, being more compressed is technically better than being less compressed into Mai. Not by a lot, but it is a little bit. At some level, though, you just have to kill the Mai before the Mai can kill you, and I think that Slime doesn't do that. Like, that's my biggest issue with Slime. If Slime sits there at 2-5 against Mai, Mai can kill Slime. If Mai sits there at 2-5 against Slime, Slime is not killing Bunny Girl.
It's not the best deck at doing it.
I think that's also Slime's issue into things like Hololive as well. Because, like, Hololive is reasonably compressed, you know? Like, Hololive, both Mari and Angura will absolutely shred Slime from 2-5. Like, Slime's compression is not what it used to be. You're not playing all this memory stuff. Like, your compression, if you're Slime now, is your Mirren combo searching for 3 cards. That's only so good, right? Like, if you can search out 3 cards in a small deck, that's great. But stock swap exists, right? And all these other things, except for Quince, have access to stock swap. Like, I just don't think that Slime is very good at living from 2-5 when it needs to, and it absolutely does not close from 2-5 when it needs to. Personally, I would rather be on Hololive than Slime, at this point, but that's just me. Moving down the rest of A, like we've talked about a lot of this already. We talked about it last week, or 2 weeks ago rather, a lot, so you can watch that video for more breakdowns on all of that stuff in the top tiers. So let's actually just skip down to the bottom of A.
So this is premium Licorice Recoil. Gains the new tools, gains all the pieces to help enable the packages. Ferrerin being in A tier, I think like good generic 8 pants 1k1 deck with an event package is quite good. Super consistent in like every game state that it wants. Fern herself swings big enough to get by. The only thing is that like you're not doing anything spectacular or blowout that would set you apart from what a lot of these other decks above you are doing. You're just like the good stuff one. It's like it is good and it is strong, and that's not an insult to the deck at all. But like there's not anything special that these other sets can't also do if they really wanted to.
Yeah. I think it does struggle a little bit from an elongated mid game, but just because I don't think the mid game of Ferrerin is all that helpful for it. But at the same time, it's just trying to loop the combo over and over again. But if you're playing into a bunch of heavy mid game decks or that vie for board, I think you're going to run into some issues a little bit down the road there, just generating resources. But
it's the issue of like when you're another deck that tries to loop level 1 combos like the 8 salvage Hololive list, and if I resolve 2 turns of double Chloe, I'm in a far better position than if I resolve 2 turns of like double Fern or like even double triple Fern.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. Because what you get off of a second turn of Chloe is just better than what you get off a second turn of Ferrerin, because you have very specific targeting with the Ferrerin combo. And that I think that's also like kind of what caps Ferrerin's ceiling a bit as well, is that its level 1 combo isn't perfect fixing, or it isn't even like an on-demand, like, get something into your hand right away. It gives you a thing that enables you, so it's almost like delaying your actual plus by half a turn, right? And I think that actually can matter in a situation where you're maybe trying to fix, and you're trying to balance the ability to fix with the ability to get out of what might be a bad deck state. So there are a lot of plays you can make in Ferrerin, but sometimes it's better to just get the card you want as opposed to having a lot of decisions that you can make.
Also, these event packages, you're touching your deck. Sometimes touching your deck in second deck doesn't feel very good.
Moving on to B tier, I think you could slide Bochi The Rock to the bottom of A tier. Like, I just think Bochi The Rock feels really nice to play. Like, the text on the cards reads really good. The package is really consistent. So, like, I don't think the line between A and B is particularly thick either. Like, I think the A kind of flows into B a bit. Like, the reason it's here is because you have to divide A and B somewhere, and putting, like, the Nikkei stuff in B tier felt wrong. But I don't see a massive difference. Like, 8 Salvage Quince and Bochi The Rock, they're the same deck. Like, very shockingly similar. Like, you could very easily put them right next to each other on a tier list, and it would not matter at all.
Yep. Then we have the second standby deck, and well, I guess Nikkei was also standby, but we have the second 8 standby deck in the format. Unfortunately, English format doesn't care as much about boards as much as Ayakashi would want it to feel. It is like just a good standby deck.
And then the rest of these are basically just good 1K ones, right?
The next 4 decks are all Icy Tail finishers.
They are all Icy Tail finishers. And I think that also speaks to where Icy Tail sits in the English meta too. Like, it's better in JP than it is in English. because JP is a more conservative format where you usually get to play an extra turn. And in English, bigger numbers are more important. Like, you look at what's in the A tier, you see things like Gura, Marine, Ainz, Hendrickson, Nikke, like stuff that just has these, big ol' Ferrerin, big ol' burns. And I think if there's a reason why those are in A versus B, because in our format, in English, bigger numbers at level 3, bigger burn numbers at level 3 are better than the consistency of the Icy Tail. And also, the Icy Tail has its whiffs. Like, every Spicy Tail list has the inherent problem of there is a 20-25% chance that I just don't hit 7 damage with this. And that's something you just kind of have to live with if you're in an Icy Tail list. And if you're not playing the hyper consistent, 50 great cards list that Bunny Girl has, you're going to end up in B tier. But then the rest of this, mostly 1k1 plussing stuff, and also some like weirder stuff, right? As you get to the end of B tier, you have like Spy that's trying to play like defensively at level 1, Guilty Gear that's kind of doing this weird standby something else mix, Tokyo Avengers, resource intensive build up for big finisher, 8 standby Hololive, which we talked about last time. And then you get into Rurouni Kenshin, which just has like the weird, like potentially explosive finisher, but it's got an awkward cost to pay. So moving into C tier briefly, this is the stuff that we don't expect to like be super relevant, but it'll be there, and you have to at least like recognize what it does. Macross Delta, I think, is probably one of the most interesting things on this list, just because like it has such a unique play pattern, and I think that it can catch people off guard who have maybe never seen it before. Ari Ferreira, like, it just throws massive swings at the board the entire game, builds up all this stock. Like, it's, in a way, not unlike Tokyo Avengers, except it's, like, trying to do a lot more of its damage in the mid-game, but it's also, like, that unique, like, trying to do its own thing, doesn't really care what your opponent's doing, because it's probably crashing its board anyway. It just doesn't care. Cats is Cats, Avatar, like, Mastering the Elements, same kind of vibe. Like, it does one thing that's really fun and interesting, but, like, it's kind of what it does. Adventure Time, just like, it's an old set, doesn't have the consistency tools. Haruhi does one thing. Hatsune Miku, does it do one thing yet until set 2 comes out? Jury's still out on even that at this point. And you can't even play, like, the Project Sakai stuff with it, so. But yeah, that is our tier list. Lots of wiggle room, a lot of, like, this doesn't feel too firm. Like, in previous years when we've talked about tier lists or done tier lists, it's like, this is very much, like, where things feel. Like, it feels like there's a strong delineation.
We would like to feel that all the stuff on this list is within about 3 or 4 spaces of where it probably will end up being. Within that margin of error, I guess is what we could call it. It's like, I'd say it's like everything is within like 3, 4, maybe a 5 slot jump from where it probably could be. And it's closer as you get closer to the top.
And that's also like, it wouldn't shock me at all to see a team featuring a Rurouni Kenshin or a Shauna or a Blue Archive win a big event. That wouldn't shock me at all. Like, especially because in trios, you just got to go 4-2. If everyone on your team goes 4-2, like, that's enough to top pretty often.
Everyone going 4-2 is like almost enough. Yeah, that's enough for your team to be undefeated. Like, that's enough to be number 1 seed. Like,
yeah. I mean, shoot, Brayden, you, me, and Mark did that one time. We were 6-0 in Swiss. And all of us had losses, but, like, that's how trios works, right? You just got to win 2 out of 3. And, if Rurouni Kenshin goes 3-3 and the other 2 decks in its team go 4-2 and 5-1, like, you can get there. Like, you can still get there. So that's one of the things I like about trios, is that it, like, forces you to think about other things, because in round 5, you absolutely could be paired off against Avatar. You absolutely could just see Ayakashi Triangle, And there's plenty of stuff that we didn't talk about today that you can also see at Summerfest. This is not comprehensive because if it were, this would be a 5-hour video.
This list would be like 4 times larger as well. Like,
Right.
There's so many things.
Was it last year, maybe 2 years ago, that someone brought the power up team, like Kill la Kill, Log Horizon, and Haruhi, and I think they like got top 8 at a smaller tournament? Was it a year ago, 2 years ago? Like,
They were like X3 at least at like one of the major ones, I think, or something like that. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There was the power up one that made it. There's like the
Yes.
triple fate format, like triple fate teams. I know have gone like
Mhm.
X3 at
Yeah.
these regionals.
yes, and that's one of the best things about this format. Personally, this is why this is my favorite set of events every year, is because the pressure really feels like it's off. There's no Worlds invite on the line. You just bring something you like and have fun with your friends. And like, there will be people who are trying hard, right? There will be people who are really pushing for mats or whatever, and it's like, that's great. Do that. By all means. As someone who has been in Top Cut in multiple, trios events, it's super fun to push for Top Cut. But it's also fun to occasionally sit down across from something and go, I have no idea what this does. Like, you're going to have to read every one of your cards to me because I've literally never seen this deck in my life. And that will happen to you. And it's pretty fun.
Yeah, trios lets you take your pet deck effectively, not completely your pet deck, but yeah, your other decks that you wouldn't normally bring, and it lets you try to like really flex your own muscle, I guess.
It feels
as
really good.
compared to having to really conform to a format, which you kind of have to do for some of these other singles.
It feels really good to take a deck that you love and you believe in and go X2. Because you can do that. And then you can say, hey, I took this and I went X2. I think this is still viable or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that's a good feeling. And singles is a harder environment to do that in because you almost feel like you're wasting a slot sometimes. It's like, but if I brought something really good, I might be able to push for Top Cut. And it's like, here, who cares if you push for Top Cut? It doesn't really matter like that. I am literally going to Chicago this year with 2 people who I taught how to play Weiss and have really only like picked up playing it like, regularly in the last year or so. And we're just going to go and have a good time. Like, that's what we're doing. So it's a great format. If you can get to a Summerfest Trios, please do. You absolutely should. It's, I think, one of the best things that Bushiroad does, and one of the reasons that I continue to play Weiss as seriously as I do, is so that I can go to these events and have a good time. So let's wrap up with one more quick thing. I posed this question to you for you to think about, so hopefully you thought about it to some extent. Both of you, if you had to pick a deck that wasn't on our tier list, like you could pick a set that we've talked about, but a deck that we have not touched on at all, what would you bring? And you might be, like, at least one of you I think actually is.
I've brought tons of stuff to team formats and I've done very well. Notably, my last Top Cut was with 8-bar Data Live. Been playing a lot of 8-bar random stuff, so 8-bar Blue Archive, 8-bar Quince. I've been on a bar streak recently. I might try out the choice Bunny Girl builds, or if I find a cooked up Nikkei list, we'll see what I can do with that.
I've been messing around with SAO quite a bit.
It's like that's always a nice classic to bring, the nice throwback sword art.
Right?
I will be on 8-bar Dragon Maid, which I don't think surprises anybody. Burn 1, swing for 4 with cancel burn 4 still goes pretty crazy. And the fact that you just get to go through your entire deck all the time, you get to see all of your cards all the time, and you have perfect waiting room fixing pretty much on command in an 8-bar list where it's super easy to loop your level 1. It's just one of the most consistent things I've ever played, and it has a bonkers top end. So yeah, sign me up. Super fun to play. We're going to run it back. But that is it for us. Thank you so much for joining us. We know this video is pretty long, but we think it was worth it so that we have a good, big preview of what is to come. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.
See you then.
See ya.